Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Midday check-in. Dr. Nicole here. And listen, I want to talk to you about taming your anxiety. So you all know I usually like to go live at night, but I said this is a good time to do a midday check-in because this is one of the times when anxiety tends to ramp up for us because we're usually in the middle of doing a lot of different things, and then our thoughts start getting the best of us and we get paralyzed. So I want to talk about taming your anxiety. I have been hearing so much from people who are experiencing a lot of anxiety and they are not sure what to do. I'm trying to get my camera right. Not sure what to do. They feel like they don't know who to turn to because they don't know who can give them the answers. And so, as I teach a lot about boundaries and elevating your self-love and your relationships, a lot of times there are things that can hinder us from doing that. And anxiety is one of those things. And I honestly don't think we talk enough about anxiety, right? So, hey, how are you? So, anxiety is very, very prevalent. What does that mean? It means that a lot of people that you don't even imagine suffer from anxiety, maybe even yourself, right? Don't even, a lot of people suffer from anxiety, people you wouldn't even imagine, and they don't talk about it. A lot of times they don't look like it, right? We think of anxiety as something like a person would just always be nervous. Sometimes it looks like that. A lot of times it doesn't, because a lot of times we keep anxiety going in our mind, but we don't show it on the outside, right? So it's very, very prevalent. And if you experience anxiety, it's completely, I want to normalize it for you so you don't feel bad about it. You don't feel bad about asking for help or looking for solutions, right? In fact, up to 20%, like 22%, of people will experience some form of anxiety in their lifetime, right? So that tells you, I know a lot of times we talk a lot about depression, which can be an issue that many people experience, but anxiety is actually much more prevalent. And a lot of times people have depression, but anxiety is tacked on top of it, which can make it feel even, harder to get out of, right? So part of what happens with anxiety is we end up having a pattern of thinking, a thought pattern that makes us focus on the things that we can't control. And because we can't control them, we feel more out of control. We feel like we're not able to manage our lives, and we start getting paralyzed about certain decisions that we have to make, right? So anxiety can look like worrying a lot. Hey, happy Tuesday. It can look like obsessing over small decisions, small things that you have to do. It can look like focusing on doing things that aren't going to get you, aren't what you really want to do, right? So it could be like procrastination. It could look like certain behaviors, certain things we do, like if we have a type of anxiety that's related to OCD, we start doing things, we start checking things, we start going back and forth, and it takes us off track from what we need to do. Anxiety can also look like panic attacks. And has anybody here ever had a panic attack? Let me know, right? And if you have, you know that a panic attack is not something you can always see on the outside. A panic attack doesn't look like, oh my God, right? Usually what happens is a panic attack is so internal, where a person themselves will feel like their heart is racing, maybe their palms are sweaty, their thoughts might be racing, they might feel something in their tummy that feels maybe like indigestion, but it makes them feel really, really scared to where they wonder what's going on with them, but they don't necessarily tell anyone. It's almost like that phenomenon of suffering in silence. So I have been with people who have been in the midst of a panic attack, but you would only know if you looked at like the subtle cues on their face where they feel like they look a little bit like concerned, but they're trying not to show it. right? So, you know, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, worry, obsessive thoughts, those are all things that happen inside. And most of the time, the people around us don't know, which makes it feel even more isolating and more difficult to get help with. And here's the thing, so many high functioning people who are like, you know, doing the thing, as we say, right? They're doing all the things. They experience anxiety, sometimes in the form of insomnia, like they can't sleep, in the form of difficulty making decisions, or getting paralyzed, or, as I said, procrastinating, self-doubt. And those are things that nobody on the outside can see. And that's why when we talk about working or focusing on your mental health, it's something that you have to take ownership of, because nobody can see it a lot of times. And so nobody will say, hey, you need to take care of your mental health, right? A lot of times people will keep piling things on you, keep expecting things of you, keep thinking that you're doing okay. Meanwhile, inside, you're experiencing all of these difficulties, right? So that's why it's so important that we educate ourselves and we learn about it. So anxiety is really common. Just to recap, it's really common. It often is something that people on the outside can't see, because it affects your thoughts, your feelings, and even your physical, you know, what's going on with you physically, internally. And it's not always something that people can see. One of the main things that drives anxiety is a fear of uncertainty, a fear of the unknown, right? So in a lot of ways, you can see why anxiety is common. Because as humans, what we need, that's a part of a need, right? If you ever follow Tony Robbins and people like that, they talk about the different levels of human needs, right? We need to be validated. We need to feel secure. And in a certain way, we seek out certainty. But it's a fine balance, right? Because none of the things that we really want, okay, you said you needed this today, I'm so happy, right? None of the things that are really going to take us to our next level are going to take place without some level of risk. And that's life in general. There is, as much as we want to focus on getting certainty, there is absolutely no 100% certainty in life. I'm sitting here right now. My plan is to go pick up my children from school, come back. I have to teach a class. I have some things to do tonight. Might even go live again, right? That's my plan. I have it in my mind, like that's what I laid out. But when I walk out the door, or even when I sit here, there have been things that have happened where houses have collapsed on people, right? And I'm not saying that to make you afraid. I'm saying that to say that when we focus so much on certainty, we're almost deluding ourselves or fooling ourselves that there can be 100% absolute certainty in life. But what drives anxiety is when we have this deep fear of the unknown. That's another way to say certainty. We have this deep fear of the unknown. And so we end up, playing, our minds keep going, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? I can't make that decision because I don't know the outcome of this. I've got to weigh all my options, or I'm worried about what might happen. I'm really worried about, that's like generalized anxiety, a lot of obsessive worrying about what could happen. And what that does is it ends up it ends up like making you not take action in a way that would be beneficial to you. Some people, think about it, have a fear of what they might find out at the doctor's. What do? They say, I'm not going to go because I'm scared to find out. And then what happens? That actually is a negative thing, because you end up maybe not finding out something soon enough where it could have been taken care of. I know a lot of people that say, you know what, if I have cancer, I don't want to know. Tell me at the end. And if you think about it logically, that doesn't make sense. But it's driven by that fear that we have. Like, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So we stay in the box of the known, right? So also with anxiety is a lot of times what happens with people who suffer chronically, like anxiety over time, they end up having a really poor self-care way of taking care of themselves. A lot of times they do a lot. They pour into other people. They think that's going to bring some measure of certainty, right? They pour into other people, and they have a habit of not pouring into themselves, right? So when we think about what are the ways to tame anxiety, it's different facets, right? I call it a three pronged approach. One is self-care, working on your self-care. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Another one is monitoring your thoughts, right? There are these things that we call distorted or irrational thoughts that kind of make the anxiety go on and on and on. It's almost like those thoughts trick us into believing the anxiety, right? And then there is also behaviors, things that you have to do, right? Have you ever heard fake it till you make it, right? I was just talking to someone who was saying, we were talking about developing a routine where they have healthy foods that they eat throughout the day. And the person told me, you know what, I'm not in the mood. I can't eat if I don't have a mood. And I said to myself, there are certain things for our well-being and in life that if we wait for the mood, they will never happen, right? Eating and incorporating a healthy, nourishing diet, that's something you have to do. That's not something you have to wait for the mood to do, right? So that's one of those things. When we talk about anxiety, it's like you're taking care of yourself, monitoring your thoughts and feelings, and then looking at your behaviors, things that you do, right? So when it comes to taking care of yourself, that's number one. When it comes to taking care of yourself, you have to look at your daily routines. What are the things that you're doing day to day that build up towards self-care and taking care of your well-being, right? So self-care is not it's like a final exam. Anybody have kids and you tell your kids, you know what, you cannot, or if you teach or anything, you can't wait until the end of the whole school year to study everything and think you're going to learn it. You have to do it little by little over time, right? So it's the same with your self-care. Little by little, you can't not get sleep for a whole week and then think you're going to catch up on the weekend. Sometimes on the weekend we get extra sleep, but you have to build a consistent routine where you do things like look at the amount of sleep you're getting per night, making sure you do some sort of exercise or movement or even stretching, throughout the day, because we tend to sit, and then when we stay in our bodies, when we stay in our minds and we don't move our bodies, it sort of reinforces the anxiety, right? So you have to look at your movement. You have to look at what you're eating, drinking enough. Sometimes with anxiety, we get so disconnected from our bodies and what our body needs, where we don't even know, oh my God, I was thirsty. That's why I was cranky. Oh my God, I never ate. It's 5 o'clock. I didn't eat anything, right? So it's monitoring yourself consistently to do those little things that build up, and that's a consistent practice of well-being. Even when it comes to, I have so many people that talk about insomnia, right? I'm going to show you one of my secret weapons, right? So there's three things. One, you have to develop what we call sleep hygiene. You have to develop a routine where you're cutting off screens 30 minutes before, you're making your sleep area clear and decluttered, right? You're trying to get on some routine. I know some people, it depends on your work, but your body craves routine and what we call homeostasis. It wants to know what's going on so it can balance everything out. So you want to try your best to get a type of routine, and you'll find that that's when you get your best sleep. You want to try relaxation techniques such as deep breathing. I've done some breath work on here. There's something called the reset breath that really helps calm you for sleep. That's when you breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. You hold it for 7, and you breathe out through your mouth to a count of 8, right? In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. And you try this every night, do 4 to 6 rounds. Here's the thing. You have to be willing to invest in trying it. I have so many people that say, well, I tried it last night, it didn't work. It's one of those things as well. It's consistency. When you go to the gym, you don't think you're going to do one day of, triceps or whatever, and you're going to build muscles all of a sudden, right? You have to do it consistently, right? So that's the same thing with that breathing. That can be part of your routine. Try it for 2 to 3 weeks and see how it calms you. And this is my little secret weapon, right? I don't take sleeping pills or anything like this, but this is a supplement called Calm, and it has magnesium in it, which helps to calm the muscles and calm your system. And this helps, and it has lavender and lemon balm. So the scent is so good. It's so relaxing, right? Anybody ever use aromatherapy, right? Essential oils. Lavender is so relaxing. So this has a lavender scent. It has magnesium, and it has it's mainly magnesium and vitamin B, sometimes B6. Sometimes we are vitamin deficient, right? So you want to use these things on a regular basis to get your sleep intact, because there's 2 times a day when I have noticed anxiety strikes for people. It's midday, right? When you're in the middle of doing your stuff and then you start getting paralyzed with your thoughts, which is why I did this live now. Or it's at night when you're trying to go to sleep. You finally, get everything together. You get in bed and then boom. What happens? The thoughts come, right? If this has happened to you, type a 1 in the chat, right? It's common. We don't have to be ashamed. We don't have to look. I've been there myself. Okay, so it's your self-care routine. You got to make sure you're eating. You got to get your sleep together. Sometimes you have to exercise throughout the day to make sure you're tired enough to sleep, right? The second thing is, so I said there's the self-care. The second thing is monitoring your thoughts. Anxiety will trick us into believing that we should cut off our options because we're not sure or we're not certain. What does that look like? It looks like things like what we call catastrophizing, saying, oh my God, it's like the typical making a mountain out of a molehill. Something that's small, you in your mind, you make it out to be so big, and to say, see, I should have never done that in the first place. Right? I had a routine of doing lives with you guys, and I'm getting home construction. My whole house is getting renovated, my office and other parts. They started a little bit earlier. We were supposed to start a few weeks later. Contractors, you got to go with the flow. They started earlier. It started messing up my routine of different things, such as things I was going to be teaching, my masterclass, my lives. Now, I could have said, you know what, you see, I don't need to do it anyway, right? I could have said that. That would be making a mountain out of a molehill. It would be saying, because one thing happened that was outside of what I expected, it means the whole thing is over and it's a wash, right? So you have to be able to monitor your thoughts. What are those little ways that you feel yourself talking yourself out of what you need to do? What are those little ways that you find yourself criticizing yourself and saying, you know what? Oh gosh, I knew I wasn't going to do good at that. Or I knew, oh gosh, nobody wants to, whatever it is. You can think of any example, for yourself, where you might be going into that negative self-talk, where also if something isn't perfect, then in your mind it becomes terrible. If it's not, you either idealize, you make it out, everything has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect for you, that says, well, it's not worth doing or trying anyway. Right? Or it's, you got to train yourself to see the positive. Sometimes anxiety will cause us to get into a pessimistic, like where we think things are negative. Hey, everybody, where we think things in a negative way. The typical is the glass half empty or half full, right? So sometimes when we get into that state of procrastinating, of downing ourselves and talking negatively to ourselves, that makes us see the thing as half empty versus being able to have an optimistic view on things. I could look at the fact that the home renovation into my house started earlier. I could say, you see, oh man, it messed up all my plans. Now I got to rearrange everything. My office is a mess. Or I could say, you know what? Wow, these contractors are on the money. They started early. They're about it. We're going to finish this project on time. Right? There's always a flip side way to look at it. Yes. Gratitude coach. Yes. There's always another way to look at it, right? So it's about monitoring your thought pattern and looking for how it tries, the anxiety tries to trick you. What anxiety does, it serves a purpose, but sometimes it overstays its welcome, as I say, right? It's almost trying to protect us from doing things that might be dangerous. But you have to look at when your anxiety is getting out of control, because it's trying to protect you from some of the things that the risks you need to take are important to help you grow, right? So it's almost like you have to do this dance with anxiety where it's like, all right, anxiety, stay in your place. You're stepping over the line, you're crossing boundaries, right? Because you're trying to keep me in a mindset where I'm doubting myself, where I'm procrastinating because I think something is not good enough. Okay? So it's monitoring our thought patterns, right? And the other thing is, and I'm going to get to the question, the third thing I said is your behaviors. We've heard all the cliches. You have to walk the walk sometimes, right? You have to do it before you feel it sometimes, right? We have an example, I'm a Muslim, and we say, like, we have to pray daily, 5 times daily. Sometimes you don't feel like it. But if you wait until you feel like it, you will never do it. Sometimes you just have to do it, right? Sometimes when it comes to putting yourself out there or starting something, or to even, getting outside to get fresh air and walk because that's what's good for you mentally and physically, you have to decide and do it versus waiting to have the feeling or waiting to get into the mood, right? So somebody said, let me see what the comments, someone said, please give some tips for very overly private people who don't focus on themselves, but only others. Yeah, that's also a boundaries issue. That's why I talk so much about boundaries. Boundaries, self-care, the ways that our anxiety people pleasing, our anxiety being, fueling and going on and on. All of those things are intertwined. And so some tips are to be aware, first of all, that this is a cycle for you. Because a lot of times people will think it's normal. Oh, well, that's just how I am. Yeah, that's how you are, but it hasn't been serving you, right? So it's awareness. And I have made so many posts about how there is no growth without discomfort. So when you're getting outside of that mode, like that people-pleasing mode, that mode of, like you said, not focusing on yourself and only focusing on others, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable doing something different. Doing something like being willing to disappoint someone with a decision that you make. And believe me, it will disappoint some people. Because most of the times they have been used to you doing it the other way. The people-pleasing way, the only focusing on them, the not focusing on yourself, right? And a lot of times people around us get something out of that. And in a lot of ways, we get something out of it too. Because it validates us, right? I'm going deep. Can I go deep with you guys? Let me know. So part of it is being willing to be uncomfortable. And it's the small decisions that you make throughout the day. It's that one time that you decide to prioritize yourself. It's that one time that you say, you know what? My family member or my friend or my husband, my kids, they wanted me here, but I need to take 10 minutes for myself. I do it all the time. I close the door and I say, it's me time. I have to sit and meditate or breathe to recenter myself. Right? So self-care, it becomes a boundaries issue. And you have to be willing to be uncomfortable a little bit. And it gets easier, right? But you build on the discomfort. You do one thing. And people will start to get used to it. Those who don't, it's okay, right? Not everybody's going to come along. for the journey. But I was just looking at a video myself, and it's like, as we grow and we elevate, whether it's in business or in our personal lives, the journey sometimes will feel lonely because not everyone is going to come along for the ride. Not everyone is going to support you, right? So if you're working on your mental health, or you're working on your boundaries, or you're working on communicating more clearly in your relationships, not everyone is going to be cheering you along, because you're going to be making a lot of people feel uncomfortable. You're going to be making some people feel like, well, who does she, what? Who does she think she is? You're going to be making some people feel like you're pulling away from them. You're going to be making some people feel like, wait a minute, I need to look at myself because, look, Nicole is elevating. What about me? What does that make me look like? Right? So you have to be willing to be in that space where at some point you might have to feel alone, although you're not truly alone, but you might feel like that. At some point you might disappoint some people. And that's part of that is why I created things like my coaching program, because I know the accountability that is required. I know the support that's needed. I know what lies ahead. I know sort of the ups and downs that you're going to go through on this journey, right? So that was an excellent, excellent question. I love that. But you really have to practice it. You have to decide and you have to practice it, and you have to be willing to allow yourself some discomfort. And that's where anxiety kind of comes in too, because sometimes the anxiety will say, you know what, like it's normal. No one wants to feel uncomfortable, which is why you have to know that that's part of the process so that you can allow yourself to stay committed even when you are uncomfortable. But there's part of us that just wants to get out of the discomfort. So we go back to what's familiar. We go back to what's familiar. And let me tell you, what's familiar is not always what's best for us, right? So if you find yourself feeling those feelings like it's familiar, but you're mad. It's familiar, but you're feeling more resentful. It's familiar, but you find yourself pushing down, like suppressing your feelings. It's familiar, but you find yourself not being able to commit to you in the way you want to, right? Familiar is not always good. And anxiety, that's where it comes hand in hand. Anxiety wants us to go back to what's familiar because it feels safer, it feels comfortable, it feels like it's certain. But certainty, that's why sometimes people stay in circumstances that are not for them, because it's almost like, you heard that saying, would you prefer the devil you know to the devil you don't know? And my thing is, if the devil I know is in the end is not good for me, is draining me, is causing me all of this distress, then let me try a different devil, right? At least let me try. But you have to really be coached to have that mindset, right? So you see, even with me talking about anxiety, I still get back to mindset. And I work with so many people that struggle with anxiety. And when I say anxiety, I'm talking generally. I mean, like, it could be an anxiety disorder, which you need to get mental health treatment for from a professional. But it could also be the way anxiety, you might not be diagnosed, but it affects all of us at some point. And I didn't even talk about all this going on with the pandemic. When there's uncertainty in the world around us, it triggers anxiety within us. So the pandemic, all of these waves of COVID here and there, job changes, the stock market, all of these things, you hear the news with all of this violence increasing. And that's why you have to create boundaries for yourself around what you're going to take in, what information you're going to take in, because if you notice yourself getting triggered when you're exposed to certain things, certain media, certain social media, certain news, certain events going on, then you have to remove yourself from those things. Because you're not going to be able to do anything about it if you're in the heightened state of emergency in your mind and in your body. Okay? I could go on. If this was helpful to you, put a 1 or give me some fireballs. Let me know that this was helpful to you, right? I'm going to be teaching on this more and more around anxiety in the body, taming the mind, the mindset that you need to be able to work on your anxiety. Also the supplements and things like that. Okay, yeah, if people don't respect your boundaries, I'm going to do another video, but that's what my boot camp goes deep into, right? Because this is the thing. People think, this is what kills me. A lot of times I see people talking about boundaries and as if it's so simple as just telling people no. And it's a whole journey, because us not having boundaries is people like that. So when we start getting boundaries, people don't like that, and you're going to get some pushback, right? So not everybody's going to respect your boundaries, but you have to be willing to maintain them anyway and go through the discomfort of that, right? But I'm going to talk about that probably, if not Friday. I'm going to go and talk more like what to do when people don't respect your boundaries. But this is part of what I go into in my boot camp. It is a holistic approach to boundaries. It's taming your mindset. It's having the accountability. It's knowing what lies ahead and how you can avoid going backwards. Sometimes we say we're going to do our boundaries and then we go backwards, right? How you can avoid all of that, and how you can really get clear about who you are, so that you're unshakable at some point by what people around you are doing. Okay? Look, you guys, I gotta go get my kids. I was supposed to be out of here like 5 minutes ago. I love talking about this stuff. If this helps you, give me a heart, give me a fireball, something. Make sure you follow my stories, because I give little tips here and there. And I will see you guys next time. Okay? Take care.